Webbo and I could be on course for the biggest dash tap in London since the Cray twins got into a row with their rival gangsters. And this the spicy question, mate. Today, Webbo, I ask you, would selling a major asset this summer for FFP reasons be a major step back for Aston Villa? And by asset, I mean, obviously, a player.
So in short, yes, I think it's a good day to be having an FFP debate, isn't it? With the news coming from Forest and Everton, and it's some real contrasting views on it. I think if a player doesn't want to leave, but we are forced to sell him, let's say Ollie Watkins, for example, then I think that is really damaging because it completely changes the mood in the squad because it then triggers a self-doubt within everybody. So is this project what I signed up to? As an individual, you would then question the whole project.
Mhm.
If a player, let's say keep Ollie Watkins, asks to leave and then there's an opportunity to sell one of your assets, then it's a different scenario. So it doesn't have to be a huge setback. It just all depends on the scenarios that are put in front of the players and how it can affect the rest of the squad. So I think if we are forced to sell somebody and you are selling somebody against their will, or at least you're putting somebody out there who hadn't shown an interest in wanting to leave, then I think that could really just damage the squad. I think what we've got at the minute now that is working fantastically is everybody looks bought in to this Unai project. There's the only one ever source of negativity coming out of the squad is the enigma from the bench, Mr. Duran, who seems to delete his Twitter, delete his Instagram, follow a random football club, and then tell us how much he loves Villa. He's literally the only player in the squad who I ever read or see anything negative about. There was start of the season, there was some lazy journalism around Yuri Tillemans where he said he wanted to play more, and that was, oh, he's upset. No, he's a professional. He wants to play more football. That's absolutely fine. So everybody feels like they're on the right page at the moment. So if selling an asset were to unsettle that, that for me would be a bigger issue than the actual sale of an asset, because ultimately every player can be replaceable down the line. So it sounds like from trying to read Chris Heck's interview, they're not worried about FFP in that sort of sense. It doesn't sound like they're worried that they're going to have to sell players. Some of his American star quotes are fantastic when he says, well, if a top six club wants to sign one of our players, we'll just go and do it to them, which is the sort of attitude I'd expect to hear on a train to Aston on Birmingham New Street before a game from a fan saying, well, we should just go and sign Salah then, shouldn't we? It's like that sort of mentality. So it's quite refreshing to hear, I don't know, whatever his title is, Mr. Heck, coming out with that. But so it feels like we've got it all under control. And he is ultimately trying to make sure there's enough money coming into the club. And what's going to be really interesting, I think, Frankie, is how does that make fans feel? So I think our experience as fans is going to change at Villa Park. For Villa to be successful, you look at Newcastle, they do not have an issue with money, but they have an issue with FFP.
Yeah.
So they are trying. It's all about how you monetize the club, and we can, the whole global brand which they're talking about. He's paused the stadium because he wants to look at it slightly differently. They're going to have more hospitality. They're going to try and do various different things that are not what we're used to, how our experience has been going to Villa Park. And they talk about how in his views in his interview today that was in the papers, he said that Aston Villa, very, very well run club, but they're a Midlands thinking club.
Right.
They're not global. It's my job to take it global. So there's one side of my head, but I've got my business side. So I fully agree with that. If we want to be successful, we can't be the biggest club in the Midlands. That does not take you to the next level. you have to become something unique. You have to become a brand. You have to do all these type of things. You have to get more partners in. We've got Adidas now. You've got to get rid of the likes of BK8 or whatever
Oh
they're
God,
called. You've
yeah,
got to get huge names. They're
yeah.
filming their own show, trying to do the like a Wrexham-esque documentary and trying to sell that to one of the big brands. That is the way football is developing to try and generate finances. So my business side to my mind, fully get that, and it's exciting because that is how Villa are going to go forwards. I think we reported profits of something like 400,000 for the last year, whereas Man City are reporting something like 30, 40 million.
Yeah.
So we're just not competing. But then there's the Villa fan inside of me that loves Villa Park as it is today. There's elements of it that we would all like to change and just slightly tweak. But I love going to Villa Park. There's nothing about it that I drastically need to change. It'd be nice to have a few bits and pieces here and there. But there's part of me that's worried that my experience of Villa Park could completely change. He talks about how he sees 4 individual stands at Villa Park and how that isn't the best way forward. I'm like, actually, that's one of the main reasons I love Villa Park is that it is unique stadium. It's a proper football stadium. It's why I hate going to a Middlesbrough. I hate going to a Southampton because those 2 stadiums, as an example, couldn't be further apart geographically, but they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. So I think he has got it under control. So I don't think we're in danger of having a mass sale in the squad. So I think actually everything on the pitch we still should be really excited about.
Yeah.
And I think as fans off the pitch, it's going to be a challenging few years of we all want to be in the Champions League. We all want to be competing for trophies. So we are going to have to make personal sort of mind sacrifices as to what Aston Villa experience is to all of us. Because to compete with Man City, to compete with Liverpool, to compete with Man United, you are going to have to do a little bit more like they do. And we're all probably on the same sort of mindset that we mock the tourists that go to those games. But that's the brand, that's the way that football is developing. You want people to be traveling across the world to watch your team.
Yeah.
And at this moment in time, there's probably very few people who aren't fans of Aston Villa who travel overseas to watch Aston Villa. And there aren't many people going to Aston Villa's club shop and buying a load of merchandise. You go to Manchester, Frankie, on any given day, and there'll be coaches full of fans who have done a stadium tour at Old Trafford. They've done a stadium tour at the Etihad, and they've spent hundreds of pounds in both club shops. That just isn't happening at Villa. So I think from an FFP perspective, I think it's the fans that are going to have to find a way that if they want to accept success, that is what's going to happen. And I don't know if I'm ready to fully accept it yet, Frankie, because it's not what I've known. It's not like I said, every time I go to Villa Park, there's little things I love about it. And if they were to go, like for example, if it was to become a dome-shaped stadium, that would really hurt me. That would really that isn't Villa Park. It's one of the things that I can laugh at other clubs about, and I can, Villa are a unique club, and I hope that in our bid for success, that we talked about it earlier about that fan enjoyment when we were talking about VAR. I hope that Heck and the guys don't forget what Aston Villa means to fans, but also fans have to accept if you want to compete, you are going to have to make some sacrifices. So I think, so I think my FFP concerns aren't really about on the field because I think it feels like we're in the right position there. And also, I don't feel like any player is desperate to leave. I just think from a fan perspective, that's where the real challenge is going to come in the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think that's brilliantly put. I don't even know how to follow that, to be honest. It's like a playwright trying to follow Shakespeare or something. No, I think that was really interesting, and to get it from the, because you go to far more of the games than I go to, and it's fascinating to hear it from your perspective. Going to Villa Park much more regularly than I'm ever able to, really. But I think you're exactly right about Villa Park. You compare it to Goodison Park, like they're two similarly, tenured stadiums, and Goodison Park looks its age, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you can see why they're moving to the new ground. Whereas Villa Park has somehow aged really well.
Yeah.
It's still a stunning stadium, I think, in a lot of
Yeah.
regards. And was
I
one
could,
of
Frankie, I am a hazard when I'm on the road. I think it's on the M6 when you're driving southbound and you can see Villa Park on your right hand side. I
yeah,
swear, I just can't help but just look at it in awe.
yeah.
And my other half sometimes has to grab the wheels. I stop veering us towards Villa Park. There's another lane of traffic that you should be watching. But yeah, I'm as biased as I come. I think it's the most beautiful stadium. I'll go as far as saying the world. I think when you walk towards that whole tent,
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah,
it's just magical.
yeah.
I'm very, as you will vouch, I'm very sad. I keep an Excel spreadsheet of all the games I go to. So I know I've been to Villa Park over 500 times.
Mm.
And still, I get so excited walking from Aston
Same,
Station to the
same.
ground. I just like the pace I'm walking at that moment is just so
Mm.
different to every like it. That for me is why I keep going. I just love it. I just can't get enough of it. And if that was to change, it would be hard for fans to accept that is how success is. But I do genuinely think that that is the way you have to compete these days. Is the
Yeah,
fans have to make some sacrifices, and I just hope that it's done in the right way.
yeah. No, I totally agree. It's a like yeah. And my first ever Villa game was November '92, Norwich 3, Villa 2. Annoyingly, we lost, but the magic I felt that day has never ever gone away. Like you're exactly right. Like I must have been over a couple of hundred times as well, and every single time I go there, I just feel the same feeling. It's like going back to childhood.
Yeah,
And if you're not a football fan, like I understand people who aren't into football, fine, whatever. But I just do feel like you're missing out on something because it's like a connection back to your childhood, your youth, and then as you grow older, like it's still always there, and you
yeah,
meet new friends through it and all that. It's just it's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, like if Villa were to be turned into Villa Park into just a generic bowl, that I don't know, it wouldn't work for me. But I think if they're able to sort of redo the stands and improve the concourses, and my God, the concourses
yeah,
are a major issue. I think. I mean, in time, because I understand why the North Stand got delayed because I think Chrisette was right when he talked about the transport issues. Like, because effectively, if we're adding 10,000 fans to the
yeah,
stadium, the transport's not there to deal with that yet. So until that's confirmed and actually built, it's probably unwise to just go ahead and do it and then just lead to even more clogging up of the areas. But I guess one of the hopes is that with the warehouse coming in, maybe then few thousand fans will be able to stay after the game as
yeah,
well, rather than always having to go straight to that train station, stand in those queues for bloody ever. Um, but yeah, until that train station's improved and various other transport issues solved, I can see where Heck's coming from on the North Stand. And also, we're redoing the club shop, and you mentioned earlier, those revenues. If it's bigger, it's more comfortable. Visiting fans come in, they'll spend more money.
yeah,
Simple as that. But it's the cynical side of it, isn't it? When you think about it, like you don't want to think of football as like a brand and as spending the revenues and all that. But like you say, we are hoping to compete at the top, and essentially the only way you can do that, Tottenham make lots of money through their stadium. They make it through various things going on at their stadium through gigs and all this, and
yeah.
the match day experience that they have.
Well, so yeah, Tottenham's a great example. So they've just announced that I think it's the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings are going to play two. They're the other home designated teams, and I follow the NFL, and I'm thinking, oh God, I want to Chicago Bears. I've got a bit of an affiliation with, so I want to go and watch Chicago's Bears at Tottenham Stadium. So
Mm,
that, and straight away Tottenham are getting money from
yeah.
me because I want to go and see something else. And I know Villa are trying to do a lot more with summer gigs there as well. But that's the sort of thing you need to have coming
Mm,
in order to beat FFP, in
yeah.
order to compete on the field. Um, and it's a really interesting. I've had this before. Our neighbours have completely ruined our city in the sense of when you hear Aston Villa, you have no idea where it is. And the
Yeah, yeah,
fact that we're in the same city as one of the worst football teams to have the city's name It doesn't help at all. The reason Manchester
Yeah,
City were a success is because Manchester United already existed and they were able to build on the Ferguson legacy.
yeah.
We have absolutely nothing to build on with Birmingham City.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
nobody's coming to Birmingham
I
to
remember
see Birmingham City and then happen to see Aston Villa. So
I remember Dele Adibola scoring goals. I remember my dad's a Blues fan, which a long story.
yeah,
But he used to call Dele Adibola Pele, so that was
there
always quite
you
funny. But it's obviously where I get it from because I give nicknames to all the Villa players as well.
go.
But like with FFP, I think now I've seen a lot of people are against it recently. Particularly, it's become very vocal from Newcastle fans who are talking about being constrained by it. They can't go where they want. But I broadly agree with FFP only because the main reason it exists is because if Newcastle United didn't have any constraints, what they would do is exactly what Manchester City did 12 years ago. And I'm convinced Newcastle would bid this transfer window 120 million quid for Doug Suez,
Yeah,
and they'd offer him 350 grand a week. So what would happen is you'd have the inflation of transfer budget fees again would go up, like when PSG bought Neymar, and the wages would go up again. Now, unless there's a wage cap somehow, that's only a wage cap would stop that.
yeah,
But like I say, like Newcastle would definitely do that. And so essentially, what FFP is sort of protecting football from is nation state football clubs, and that it fundamentally comes down to, in my opinion, nation state ownership in football. It never should have been allowed because it's just like it's absurd what Man City have done in the last 10 years. For
yeah.
me, um, it doesn't feel like they naturally organically got there. It feels like they did essentially buy their way, which I know the City fans would hear that and get very annoyed at it. Fine, I get it, but um, and so I don't know. I sort of think that FFP is there to essentially stop Newcastle from just destroying Aston Villa, which is
Yeah,
what they would do.
that's what it's. I think the most frustrating thing about FFP is it still seems to have worked out in favour for the big clubs.
Exactly. Yeah,
So
that's
that
the
is
other side of
what's
it.
the frustrating because what we just talked about then is I agree with you on the state-owned and nation-owned thing, but how do Villa, how do Everton, how do Newcastle, how are they meant to
That
get
is, yeah, that's yeah,
that? How to make that step up? Like if you've got owners who are willing to take those risks, and obviously Newcastle is such a rare example or the most extreme example because of how much money Saudi are investing in sports at this moment in time is absolutely absurd. And it is at this moment in time a bottomless pit.
Mm.
So they are the extreme example. We say that can't happen, which is probably accurate. But then every other club is like, well, if our owners are willing to spend this money, why, what, like, how, like, that is the only way we can compete. Otherwise, there are in Brighton, for example, are an amazing club ran by a scouting system, but not everybody can seemingly do that. So I feel like FFP has a right in football because
Yeah.
certainly the Newcastle extreme example, you can't just have somebody who can do that.
Mm.
And we did previously, and they've changed the way football will forever be known. But it does feel like now we're just protecting, and once
Yeah.
again, protecting the top six, as it were, as people keep saying. So, as with anything, it probably could do with some tweaking. Um, but it's there for the right reasons. But it still feels like the wrong clubs get punished and the
Yeah.
wrong clubs still succeed. It just doesn't quite feel like it's achieved exactly what it was meant to.
Because once you get into those Champions League positions, as Tottenham have done regularly for years, that what it does for your revenues just
Yeah,
through the roof, and it is therefore then a more of a locked system totally. And also, one real drawback of FFP is what we mentioned earlier is what some of the sacrifices fans now make, because surely if clubs now feel they have to up their revenues as much as they can, that means everything gets more expensive for fans,
yeah,
essentially, if you want to compete. So that to me is actually the most negative aspect of it, is probably the impact on the match going fan.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Because we've had quite a big hike in our season ticket prices, and if we are to get top four, top five Champions League football, and that guarantees an extra 5 home games minimum with this new format that's coming in.
yeah.
they may not increase the season ticket prices, but for example, I just bought my ticket for Chelsea away today, which in the cup, which was £38. I would be amazed if a Champions League ticket is less than 40 quid. And we've got
Yeah.
5 of them. So they're going to be expecting each fan to fork out an additional £200 on top of your season ticket prices just to watch your team in Champions League football. And it's part of success comes with more games. So we have to accept that. But the everyday fan, and Birmingham is a big working class city historically, it's going to hit their pockets and they're not going to be able to enjoy it. So yeah, I think football's in a really dangerous position at this moment in time with the news coming out with Forest and Everton and potentially another points deduction and then an appeal. You don't know which season the points deduction is going to be invoked in and stuff like that. And then you've got the VAR nonsense at the moment. It seems like every manager, I haven't seen too many press conferences where Unai's really bemoaned it, which is quite
no, it doesn't.
question.
I love it.
But Vincent Company, I actually feel speaks well. He's still really angry about the Villa game. He seems to mention it every opportunity he gets. Was just ranting. It just feels like there's a lot of, we're right on the precipice of some big things happening in the football, like VAR. Feels like there could be a vote to get it kicked out. FFP, if Forest and Everton get points deduction, when is it going to come in again? It's just all a bit of a mess at the moment, and the beautiful game has long gone. What we fell in love with. So I do think football needs to be a bit careful over the next few years, and just to see where it's going, because with the Champions League reformatting as well, I don't know. There's a lot going on which is turning me off as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you read these articles, you can't even be bothered to read that because you just sort of know that it's more corruption. So I do think we're actually in a real crossroads moment in the world of football. And I don't think you and I, Frankie, are probably going to solve it tonight, but maybe one day they'll put us in charge, mate.
I'll tell you what, I reckon Gianni Infantino is listening to this right now. He's kicking back on his private jet and he's like, today, I feel like these guys have got the answer. We'll get a phone call in the morning. Me and you will be total sellouts, suiting up.
Yeah. Oh, we'll take the money straight away.
Defending them to the hilt.
Yeah.
I mean, just as a final point, just on the original question, I guess, as well, like, Villa did sell assets. If we did sell a Douglas Luiz for 80, 90 million, or God forbid, Jacob Ramsey, because he's an academy player, and he went for 60 million or something. I think with Monchi in the house, his track record is sort of unearthing gems for a relatively cheaper rate and then selling them on a few years later for higher fees. He's unearthed the likes of Danny Alves, for instance. And now we've sort of been linked with this Serbian player, Costa.
Yeah,
forgive my pronunciation. Nedeljkovic, I'm going to say Nedeljkovic. 9 million quid, 18 years of age. Already played in the Champions League against Manchester City, so clearly a player, real promise. But that to me sounded like a Monchi signing. So I would like to think that if we were to end up having to sell a big player like a Douglas Luiz, that we would hopefully be a bit more future-proofed than a lot of other clubs would be in these scenarios.
I think you got to look at it realistically in that. So I'd rephrase your terminology. I don't think we have to sell, right. But so Jacob Ramsey, we would have to sell. There should be absolutely no reason in the next couple of seasons that we sell Jacob Ramsey, because he's Villa born and bred. He should want to play for the club. We're progressing. Dougie Luiz, on the other example, we have to accept that there are more established clubs in the top echelons of league than Aston Villa. There's also a certain sex appeal to not being in Aston. So a London club, a Tottenham, and Arsenal will always have a little bit more of an appeal than Aston Villa will to certain individuals. Same with Liverpool, Man United, Man City. These are bigger names in the current history of football than Aston Villa. So you've always got to worry that if your players are playing well, and Dougie Luiz is probably the obvious name, he's been absolutely superb, and he could walk into arguably all of the Premier League teams.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That Liverpool midfield would be so much better with Dougie Luiz in it, and they're already pretty good. Sometimes you are going to players might get their head turned by that interest, especially if we were to finish sixth and don't get Champions League football. And then a team in Champions League football comes along, you could end up losing it. So I would hope we are more future-proof, because you have to accept that there always could be players leaving. What I would think now is we've got players who are probably right at the top of their level in where we are for throughout the squad. There's only probably one or two, probably three players actually I would name that I could really see going to one of those big clubs. Emi Martinez, I don't think he would want to leave Aston Villa by any stretch of the imagination,
No.
but he's good enough to go to a big club.
Play for anybody. Incredible.
Dougie Luiz is the other one, and I think Ollie Watkins. There's not that many strikers around in modern day football, so I mean, obviously, I think Tottenham just got Timo Werner in, but that's only on loan. So Tottenham probably going to be in the market for a striker. They never sign anyone to replace Kane. Arsenal struggling to score goals, so there's absolutely no danger that he's going to go in January. But summer transfer window, if we finished outside the Champions League and Arsenal come knocking on the door of Ollie Watkins, I believe he was an Arsenal fan growing up to an extent, that would tempt him. That would tempt him if the money's there. So the Monchi and all those guys have to accept that you could always lose players. So I would really hope that they are, in their head, they're trying to improve the squad, but accepting that we may lose one or two. And if that comes in, then you do really hike up the price to help your FFP out if that scenario comes out. But I don't think we're in a position where we're going to be offering Watkins to a club because we need to. I don't think we're there yet. If we're not in Europe for 2 or 3 seasons after this season with the investment we've had, then we will struggle. But you look at where the league table is at the minute, Frankie. If Liverpool win the League Cup, that means it's top 6 in Europe instantly. Look at the point gap to us to 7th and 8th. We're almost, don't want to say it too loudly, but it looks like a guaranteed top 6, to be quite honest, with the start we've had and the quality we've got. So we should be in Europe again next season at the bare minimum.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm looking forward to seeing how this season develops, really. And never know, top 5 could be Champions League as well if Newcastle and Man United hadn't bloody made it harder for everybody. But but yeah, so whereby that's been an absolutely awesome, spicy question chat. I really enjoyed that. London Lions, we're both part of it. You're chair of the football team. Let us know how, if anybody's out there and wants to get involved, how can they get involved?
Yeah, so there's a few various different ways. So, like as you mentioned during the call, we meet up at the Yak Bar near Elephant and Castle to watch games that are on the TV. We have a football team. If you want to play for the men's football team, we've got Inter Milan fan club this coming Sunday at Commons Field. You can reach out to Frankie via this podcast, or you can look for London Lions on various different socials. Always people welcome to come and have a beer and watch the game. Or if you want to play football, then we probably could do with a few extra players some of the games. I'm sure you would agree, Frankie.
Particularly young players.
Young, fit professionals.
People who can run.
Yeah, that would be ideal.